Welcome to the WanderLearn Show. I'm your host, Tapon. In this episode, I have Robert Hahn, who was in last week's episode with his wife, and we talked about Malagasy culture. And then he went to Pakistan this year to check it out. For the first time, he'd never been to a Islamic country, and he wanted to see something different. And he has an adventurous spirit. He's been to several countries in Africa. He likes to pursue avalanches and likes to get caught up in them, or at least track them. And this time he's going into Pakistan, where he has a pretty wide-ranging journey throughout the whole country. Although I haven't been to Pakistan, and I definitely want to go, and will go, inshallah, as they say. This is a little bit of insight into a place that, for many people, seems scary. And I love going to scary places, so-called scary places, because once you get there, you realize they're not that scary. Anyway, here we go. Robert Hahn about Pakistan. Your adventure, why you want to go there, why Pakistan?
Yeah, I've traveled a fair amount in Southern Asia and Eastern Asia, but never to an Islamic country. I was intrigued. So in early summer of 2022, I didn't yet have my plans finalized. And, the other reason for Pakistan is it's got amazing mountains. I'd spent some time in the Nepalese and Himalaya and Hindu Kush regions of northwest India, around Ladakh. So it was a natural extension to want to go a little bit further west and see the Karakoram. I'd never seen K2, and that was high on my list, although I once had an opportunity going over a high pass where if the weather had been clear, I would have seen it. And Pakistan has... it's a country I knew very little about. What better way to learn about it than to visit?
How much time did you spend there?
I spent about 28 days.
Okay. And where did you go?
I started in Islamabad, went west to Peshawar, all the way within a few kilometers of the Afghan border around Khyber Pass. And then I went north to Chitral, visited the Kailash valleys, headed over another pass into the region of the Karakoram in Gilgit-Baltistan, which is famous for the highest mountains in the country. Visited Hopper. It was basically a 5 or 6 day trek that I did in about 2 or 3 days to Hopper Lake, the highest lake in Pakistan, around 5,000 meters. Visited some ancient forts from the Muslim expansion era into northern Pakistan around Karimabad. Then I went to Pasar. Pasar has some very long glaciers that basically make it down pretty close to the highway. Yeah, I visited Nanga Parbat. That was the Nanga Parbat base camp.
That's an 8,000 meter mountain that Reinhold Messner, who lost his brother there. I don't know if you know that story.
Right. I don't know that particular story, but I know it's known as the Killer Mountain. It's claimed a lot of lives. These mountains in the Himalayas that receive a lot of snowfall have a lot of avalanches.
And that's something you know about.
Something I know about. So I was there during the flooding event in late August of 2022, claimed at least 600 lives. I don't know the exact figures. Probably the numbers are still being calculated, but the result was during that period of time, it was very hard to actually see summits of mountains. So if I had a time-lapse camera during the 2 days I was going up and down trying to get a good view of the mountain, maybe I would have seen most of it. But at any given time, I was just seeing little bits and pieces. Yeah, I went into the Astor Valley, which is a really bucolic valley, and over Diosai, I believe the second highest large plateau in the world. I'm not sure which plateau it is behind, but it's very popular with a burgeoning Pakistani local tourism industry. So you see a lot of 4x4s plying those roads with local tourists. And I took that route to get over to Skardu. And then I went to Houché, which is one of the ends of the Baltoro Glacier route that is essentially the way to visit K2 Base Camp and the highest mountains, some of the highest mountains on the planet.
Number one concern that a lot of people have when they hear the word Pakistan is that they think of safety. So tell us about how you reflected on that.
I did some serious soul searching. I started just scanning the internet. I actually consulted somebody that you had on the podcast who spoke about Pakistan. Do you remember his name?
Yeah, it's probably Xavier.
Xavier, yeah. He felt that Pakistan was very safe, although I had to temper.
He's intrepid.
He also believed that Afghanistan was somewhat safe.
Right.
So yeah.
He was the first Western tourist to go to Afghanistan after the Taliban took over. And yeah, he is definitely on the intrepid side. But at the same time, my instincts tell me that Pakistan is far safer than anybody imagines.
I think what tipped me over the proverbial edge in terms of thinking that it was a safe place for me to visit was a female travel blogger who had been there many times and really outlined her perspective on it, which was that it was very safe, that the police really want to try to keep foreigners safe. They don't want to have any problems with foreign governments. And I think, and that just the generosity that the local population has, and an overwhelming belief from my experience traveling internationally that people the planet over are generally good people. And particularly, I've had some very positive experiences in Africa where I've encountered Muslims. The generosity that I've experienced has been next level. So I think that's what tipped me over the edge. I had some misgivings when I had to essentially send money to a random person to get a letter of invitation to the country just to get a visa. The government doesn't make it easy for U.S. citizens to obtain a visa.
But probably other countries a little bit less onerous.
I would think so. It's a little unclear, but yeah, certainly if you're a Chinese citizen, it's very easy to go to Pakistan.
Do the Pakistanis talk a lot about India at all? I know there's some rivalry there, to say the least.
Yeah, I was advised on several occasions not to mention that I'd traveled to India, although that was about 2 weeks into my travel. So, I'd often start comparing things that I'd found similar or different to India, but I learned that was not a good idea if you tell it to the wrong person. You're greeted in Islamabad with some big propaganda related to Kashmir. That was the most sort of headline messaging that about the mistreatment of Muslims in Kashmir, according to the propaganda. In general, there's somewhat of an understanding among a lot of people that India is used as a political punching bag by governments and vice versa. So, if the ruling power is concerned about their re-election prospects, they'll start pointing fingers at India and vice versa. First, I found it quite surprising because people are quite similar within the subcontinent for the most part. Their ethnic makeup is similar, although actually, if you get into northwestern Pakistan, you start finding some Aryan people who are lighter skinned and even more blonde and blue-eyed than I am. I'm not blonde or blue-eyed, actually. But
you have blue eyes?
Yeah, hazel. But
okay.
But yeah, there were people that really resembled people you'd find in Scandinavia or Western Europe or the United States. And as a result, people would actually mistake me for... it was the first developing country that I'd traveled in where I was actually mistaken for a local.
That's funny.
On multiple occasions.
And you were not dressing like a local?
No, I wasn't dressing like a local. I wasn't wearing a shalwar kameez, although I considered it. Shalwar kameez is effectively a robe-like garment that's worn by males.
Right. Yeah, I'm familiar with it. Now, Kashmir, can you visit it?
I had to pare down my itinerary for my visa relative to what I actually did.
You got a 30-day visa?
Yes. I decided not to mention that I was going to go to Chitral. I said I was going to Islamabad, Gilgit-Baltistan, and Lahore, the cultural capital.
Did anybody care that you went beyond that?
Well, I ended up getting arraigned by police officers near the Afghan border when I announced my intention to do some hiking in the Tirishmir area. They said it was too close to the Afghan border, and the fact that I was by myself, and there had recently been a a U.S. government raid on a Taliban leader in Kabul that had stoked tension, potentially, and resentment towards U.S. citizens in particular. So I did run into some restrictions on my ability to hike in Chitral. Chitral is listed as a high level of risk to foreign travelers. And so that was frustrating. I ended up not doing everything I wanted to do in that region, but the Kailash valleys made up for that. It was the most incredible experience that I had in the country. It's an enclave where there are 3 or 4 valleys, and the local population is very different from the overwhelmingly Islamic population. They're believed to have descended from Alexander the Great, although that's not certain. But they're Aryan. They drink alcohol. They dance.
They're not Muslims?
They're not Muslims.
What do they believe in?
It's more animist.
So they're not Christians either.
They're not Christians either.
Mm.
They're much more open than Islam.
Are they seen as infidels by the Muslims?
Absolutely.
But there's not a civil war amongst them?
No, they're not threatening to Muslims, but Muslim hardliners promote their more promiscuous ways, perhaps. From a Western perspective, we wouldn't see them as such, but from hardline and conservative Islamic perspectives, they're essentially the majority. Well, they're one of the easy targets.
I see. What surprised you about Pakistan?
The thing that really surprised me is just how much less I was hassled than in India. In India, I traveled extensively in 2009 and some in 2010 as well. I was hassled nonstop by people. In Pakistan, people leave you alone. As a general rule, the biggest challenge I had was ordering an Uber when I arrived at the airport, because I didn't understand that nobody accepts a credit card, and that they didn't have a way to get paid when they accepted my Uber ticket, because it was linked to a credit card, and they didn't have a way to get that deposited. And that confusion cost me over an hour and a half at the airport trying to figure this out, and trying to figure out where these Uber drivers were and what was going on.
Wait a second, because when I was in Egypt, for example, there was Uber, but you just pay cash. I don't understand.
I didn't have any cash. And
okay.
The ATM was broken.
Oh, I see. And there was no money exchange place.
I eventually found a money exchange place and was able to go that route.
What advice would you give somebody who's traveling to Pakistan?
To go. I think it's an amazing country. Actually, most times of the year are probably a good times to go there.
Even the winter?
Even the winter. You can change where you go. If you're more interested in cultural things, going during the warm season months is a good idea. You can go to Lahore. It's the cultural capital. It has art museums. It has a lot of sort of the experience of being in a South Asian street markets, the old city. You can wander around and eat lots of chapati and things like, and just experience more of the culture. If you want to go to the Himalaya, you're better off going during the warm season months, the Karakoram, the Himalaya, and the Hindu Kush.
What month were you there?
I was there in August. I think September might be really ideal. You would get there just after the threats of significant rain. Temperatures cool off a little bit. June would be really nice as well, when some of the mountains have a little bit more snow on them and look a little bit more attractive. But one of the crazy things about Pakistan in the northern parts of the country is if you go off the main roads, these little roads are really incredibly engineered, largely by hand, but they're just on these angle of repose slopes that are constantly in motion. There's constantly rockfall, even on a sunny day, but it's worse if it rains. So I think actually probably the biggest danger is these roads, more so than any threats of terrorism. The government will keep you out of areas that they don't want you to be in. There are plenty of checkpoints. So really kind of thinking about your level of comfort with some of these roads. The other thing that was a major surprise I should mention about Pakistan is just how separated males and females are in people's homes. In South Asia, in a rural area, I could just walk into a village and somebody would invite me into their homes. In Pakistan, you needed to have a house that was big enough where the men could cloister their women and keep them out of sight. And there were a few awkward moments when I wanted to send a Delorme InReach, a satellite message, to let my friends and family know where I was. And sometimes I needed a clear view of the sky, so I demanded to go into the courtyard. And in those moments, I might encounter a female in the house, and there was some friction. And it took me a couple of weeks to figure out what was actually going on. And I started talking with a lot of men about this because effectively I wasn't able to communicate with most women in the country. I only had real conversations with about three women in my entire 28 days. And those were brief conversations, mostly in less conservative parts of the country. So that was challenging. I felt like I had a one-sided view of the country, because although I did stay in a few homes, I really didn't get to experience the culture in as deep a way as I might have experienced it in India or Nepal. So that was one challenge. And I think women may have a chance of actually bridging that gap, because I think they would be led into the lives of the females, and I don't think that the men would be prevented from interacting with them. I don't know how it would be as a solo female, or as a couple, but being a couple, you have potentially some advantages of some security of having a male present, but also maybe some inroads towards interacting with women in that culture. And I do think the culture will gradually change because the women have access to smartphones. They're
satellite TV.
In some cases, yeah. So
what do you mean in some cases? They don't have satellite TV in a lot of places?
I think they have it in a lot of places.
Okay, yeah. I mean, to me, that's a huge cultural change machine. I mean, that thing, satellite TV is just like revolutionary to the way how it impacts and infects cultures.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, I wasn't in that many homes. So that's why I say in some cases, because I don't know what was actually in a lot of people's homes. And I think.
Did you travel with a guide? Did you have it wasn't a tour, or did you have like a private guide the whole time with a 4x4 or something? Or
no, I
take buses.
I was taking public transportation. I had a connection to somebody in Peshawar who quasi-hosted me for a night, and he was the one who drove me to Khyber Pass. Then, after having a lot of failures in Chitral and getting outside and really hiking to the places I wanted to go, I decided to open myself up to having a guide. And I had another connection through my cousin's journalist friend. And this connection set me up with a local guide. He was a young guy named Safdar. He's a great guy in Hopar. And he was the one who, we did that Rush Lake trek together, and he inspired a lot of confidence. He, we were in trail running shoes. I was in trail running shoes and he was in boots, but he got me across some pretty sketchy crevasses on glaciers. And, so I decided to go with him for, we spent about 10 days together in Gilgit-Baltistan, and that got me past most of the red tape.
That's awesome. Wonderful. Final question, future of Pakistan. Any ideas?
What really struck me was looking at the GDP growth over the last 50 or 60 years in Pakistan. It's really on an upward trajectory. I think the future is bright for Pakistan. The population, it's going to be one of the larger countries in the world already with population, and its share of the pie is expanding. People are generally industrious. I think the next big step is women entering the workforce, and how quickly it really enters the big time, I think will depend on how quickly it opens up to allowing women to become more productive members of society. But for now, the growth rate is still quite high, which tends to push them in the direction of women mostly staying at home.
Excellent. Well, let me know what your future plans are. What do you plan to go to next?
Probably Latin America, actually. There's a decent chance, or potentially some of the Caucasus areas.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. Well, you can get caught in avalanches in either one of those places.
Absolutely.
Robert, thanks again.
Thanks, Francis.
And that ends this episode of the WanderLearn podcast, where we explore travel, technology, and transformation. If you'd like to see the show notes with links to what we've talked about, go to WanderLearn.com and click on this episode. If you'd like to connect with me, just remember Tapon. That's my first initial and my last name. Tapon is always my social media username. My website is ftapon.com. Do you want to leave me an anonymous voicemail where you can make a comment or ask a question? Then go to speakpipe.com/ftapon. Furthermore, if you'd like to get rewarded for supporting my projects, then go to patreon.com/ftapon. That's where you can pick up some remarkable rewards for as little as $2 a month. Now, 5 quick favors. Number 1, subscribe to the WanderLearn podcast. 2, download it. 3, share it. 4, review it. And 5, sign up for my newsletter at wanderlearn.com. Our theme music was composed by Eric Stratman. This is Francis Tapon, encouraging you to wander and learn.